right, there are many paths that you might have taken to get to this course, and along those paths, perhaps you've run into me, you've seen me before, you've heard me speak, perhaps maybe seen another program that I have, maybe read Deliberate Fun and came to it because you found the Easter egg, and so you came over to this course because you found that great Easter egg inside of the book. But to introduce myself more broadly. So yes, as of now, I'm deeply involved with gamification of learning and development, but it wasn't always my focus. So it's one of those things of what do you do with the BA in English? I don't know if you saw the play or the musical Avenue Q, but the storyline of Avenue Q is this young man has just got a BA in English, and so he starts on A Street, Avenue A, Avenue B, Avenue C, and it's not till he gets to Avenue Q that he finds an apartment that he can afford. Because what do you do with a BA in English is the opening song. However, so I didn't just stop at a BA, I went all the way through to a PhD. But why this is important is because when I was working on my doctorate was during the dot-com boom, and so as someone who's doing a lot of writing and had a big background in writing, suddenly content was king, everybody needed content, and so they'd give you huge portions of their company if you would sign them up. And so one of my things that's true, but one of them did come to fruition. I got a little bit of pay out of it, but at one point I owned 200,000 shares in companies that no longer exist. Right? So the point is this, that was my early entry into business, and then so with that, copywriting, persuasive writing, and so on. So put a lot of attention into marketing. So several years ago, actually, I was giving seminars for companies on marketing, copywriting. Back in 2010, I wrote this book, Cavemen Can't Market. Don't go out and purchase the book unless you happen to be in marketing, but please save your money for Deliberate Fun. It's probably a little more applicable to what you're doing. But anyway, in Cavemen Can't Market, the premise behind it, the story behind it, is that cavemen, what they did is when they wanted something, they just went out and just clubbed it. Right? So, but anyway, as we like to portray cavemen, is that how they got married? Essentially, the caveman went out with his club, knocked the lady over the head, and drug her back to the cave, and now she's his wife. Right? So, as a cartoon version, I guess is how we would say that. But the concept was that that's how most people market. They take their club, they take their message, and they just beat customers over the head till that finally they submit and end up buying the product. And the concept there is that actually pushes people away, especially in the modern era. And so I call that ew marketing because it pushed people away. People don't want it. If you think of the old used car salesman type experience. So that was ew marketing, is pushing people away. And then my book had woo marketing, so how to draw customers to you. Now, before you start thinking about that, we're going to be talking about marketing this whole time. But think about this. We also do that for our learners. We want to be attractive to them. We want them to want to go to our programs, to learn from our programs, to come into our space. And so it does become important to us to create this woo experience. So inside of woo marketing, I had three levels. And so it's important to touch on these really quickly. Again, we're not going into huge depth in it, but you might find it interesting. You don't have to buy the book. The first stage is the attraction stage. We must be attractive to them, not to us, but to them. Now, if you remember self-hugging has a problem here, is that what most companies do, remember I said most people end up designing for themselves, learning experiences for themselves. But when it comes to marketing, the same thing happens though, is that what happens is that companies portray what they enjoy, not what their customers enjoy, but what they enjoy. In this case, what is attractive to them. So follow me on this, right? Just bear with me for a little bit here. As a heterosexual male, I find women attractive. Now, does it make sense that if I want to be attractive to someone, let's say if I were dating, if I wanted to be attractive to women, does it make sense that I would portray what I find as attractive? In other words, does it make sense for me to dress up like a sexy woman to attract sexy women. Okay, some of you just got a response there. That's ew, right? That's ew marketing. So what we want to do is be attractive to them. What do they find as attractive? And this is where we're going with learner personas. What do they find attractive? What's going to draw them toward us? And this becomes important inside of the persona thing. Okay, so that's the attraction stage. So that's where we're going to be spending a lot of time on. Then just to complete the book for you here, so we have the attraction stage, then we have the conversation stage. We don't jump straight to sale, closing the deal. We start to have a conversation. So lots of techniques inside of there that, by the way, we should be using those conversational techniques in our learning programs, especially if you're doing e-learning where there's a lot of reading going on. And you can even use it inside the words, especially if it's fully scripted. Your program is scripted with a voiceover. So there's a lot of stuff that we can use inside the conversation stage, and that's where the cool, tricky stage is. And then the final stage is the commitment stage. Now, we don't jump straight to marriage. We make small commitments along the way. Will you meet me for coffee? Will you meet me for dessert? Let's go to the movie. So a series of commitments will eventually get us to a full commitment. And the same might be true with our learners. Make it easy to onboard and then build it all the way through. If we're asking them to jump into a graduate program, that takes a lot of commitment. But perhaps you could take this little course, and which is actually part of a bigger series. So maybe you're just, that's what's happening here, testing the water. You've taken a little bit of a commitment, not a huge commitment, to go through this course, so that perhaps you'll want to spend more time with Sententia gamification. So the point here is that these are the 3 stages inside of the Caveman Camp Market book. So to give you a background on this, okay, so all this to say, because I want to pull some learning ideas through this, and so now let's go to the history of learner personas. I'm sorry, personas in general. And to do that, I want to introduce you to Debbie Diet Coke. Debbie Diet Coke, you can see here. Now, Debbie Diet Coke was created by a television station in San Antonio, Texas, back in the 90s, so decades ago. See, in the old days of marketing, we used to talk about our demo. So it means our demographic. So what is your demographic? What is the group that you're trying to reach? So we would say certain things like, oh, our demo is women between the ages of 25 and 35 who have a household income between 40 and 60,000, who have 1.7 cars, 2.3 children, and so on. Well, that's not you. You're a specific age, you make a specific amount of money, your household makes a specific amount of money, you have 1 car, 2 car, maybe no car, 3 cars, but do you have those neighbors who have 1.7 cars? You know, the one that runs and one that's up on blocks, right? And then if you have 2.3 children, congratulations, you're pregnant. So anyway, what this television station did in San Antonio, Texas in the 90s, now this is before all the cable channels and all the streaming channels, there's only very, very few stations that they could watch back then. I don't even know what they're called anymore. But, you know, so ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, and I believe Fox was around back then. But it's very, very limited in the number of television stations that were available to folks, and yet they had the business sense to bring it all down to one person. This is Debbie Diet Coke. So they knew Debbie's exact age. They knew that she was married. They knew that she was a stay-at-home mom. They knew that her husband, what his job was and the exact amount of money he made per year. They knew that he had a newer sedan they were making payments on, but she drove an older minivan that was paid off. They had 2 children. They knew the ages of the children, how well the children were doing in school, what the children like to do after school. They knew everything about Debbie, down to that she was 15 pounds overweight and preferred Diet Coke to Diet Pepsi. And they had the discipline to focus their marketing on her. Now, San Antonio is a big city. According to them, they say they're the 7th largest city in the United States. Pretty sure that's by territory. Where I heard that was in their airport. They're making over the announcement. It's one of the smallest airports that I fly in and flown in and out of. It's not that big of an airport. But anyway, the point is It's very diverse. There's a lot of people who are not in Debbie's demographic, but enough people are like her that when they communicate with her, they attract those people that they are trying to reach. So we're going to do that the same here. Now, the other reason I'm using that is because I know right now you've already have that resistance to this concept. You say, oh, you don't understand. I have hundreds of people in my training programs. One lady one time said, I have millions in mine. And I'm like, well, okay, that's interesting. But I'm going to let you off the hook a little later, as you'll see, because a lot of times in industries we'll create maybe 3, 4 at the most different learner personas to represent different segments, and you'll hear that later. But here's this television station that's reaching this whole city that had the discipline to focus on Debbie. And that's what we're going after here today. So that's what I want you to think about. And a little later in the course, I'm going to start talking about the differences and why this is important that we have that separation, that we identify who Debbie is. Now, to wrap up the history here, so marketing's been doing it for a very long time. There's some interesting case studies out there if you really want to nerd out on this one specific area. But then now we're starting to do this with learning programs. Learning programs, folks are having the same discipline. So years ago, when Monica Cornetti and I at Sententia Gamification, we did it seemed like it was maybe a half-day workshop or something at one of the major learning conferences. And at that point, nobody was talking about learner personas. We had a full room. Lots of folks were interested in it and were very skeptical of it. That's where that one lady was like, oh, I can't do this. I have millions of folks in my training programs. And but over time, we've seen more and more adaptation of this concept of a learner persona. So it has become a skill set that becomes very important. The problem, though, is most people don't have a system by which they do it. They just randomly create it. And what you're going to get in this program is a process, a system by which you create your learner persona. You have a tool coming up that you'll actually fill out and use as we go through this course. And you have a deep understanding for moving that forward so that, especially if we're going into gamification and different other types of things where we want some more specialized, more technical learning programs, that we'll know exactly what they find as fun. Okay, so what will engage them, what will attract them, again, woo them to our program. All right, so that gives you sort of some background of where it's come from. I've introduced some concepts to you that will become more important that we're going to unpack as we go further through this course. All right, so let's move on to the next module.